Hey YouTube, what's going on? On my way back home from work, and I've decided to kind of pull off the main interstate here and do a review, walk around, and talk about my daily driver a little bit. Now, it's a 2006 Lexus Is350. It is the rear-wheel drive version with the 6-speed automatic transmission. In this car, I absolutely love this car, you guys. It is very reliable. I have no issues with it. I want to talk kind of about my back history of why I bought this car when I did, and go from there. So I bought this car about 5 years ago, used. So I was just barely graduated high school and I was going to college, and I had an Xterra before and I couldn't afford that gas anymore. But I also wanted a car that was a bit sportier, obviously because I had an SUV, but I wanted a sporty car, reliable, that had 4 doors and enough room that I could still kind of utilize the space a little bit. So I started looking, and I was like every other teenager out there, I was looking at the knowns, right? The STIs, the Subarus. I was looking at the Focuses and stuff like that. But as I started doing my research and kind of looking at more cars, I didn't want just the average car. So I kind of started looking into more the European cars, the BMWs, and mostly BMWs, the E30s and E46s. Didn't want to afford those. I didn't want to have to fix them if they did break, because I couldn't afford it. So I looked at the Japan side of it. Like I said, though, I wasn't looking at the Subarus because I didn't want to work on the boxer engines. So I found this Lexus Is350. After doing some research on the car, I kind of fell in love with the styling of it. Now, I did like the Is300 a little better, but it was a lot harder to find a clean one, and I needed a car now. So I already sold my daily. So started looking, and I wanted this color because I love the gray look of this color. I bought it with 135,000 miles for about $8,000. It was used, whatever. It was a Toyota engine, the 3.5, that they use in a lot of vehicles. Had to be fun, reliable. It rates 300 horsepower. It had to be fun, right? Went and test drove this car, and guys, when I drove it, sure, it's not the sportiest car, and it was all stock then, but I loved it. I fell in love, right? So I bought the car, I brought it home, I drove it how it was for a year or two. Since then, I have lowered the car 2 inches on Bilstein shocks. I have put wheels, tires on it, and S-Sport exhaust and intake, and that is it. There's not much modification mods you could do to these cars. That's the downfall. There's not a really large aftermarket market for these. But this was enough. It was a daily drive around going to college. So fast forward to today. It is 2020 and the world is going crazy. But it's okay, I have my reliable Lexus, 215,000 miles. Never has let me down. Change the oil when it calls for it and just do regular maintenance. I did change the plugs and did a full service at 200,000. Not needed, but I did it. Would I recommend this car to someone else? Yes, I would highly recommend this car. Now, they do make all-wheel drive versions, but I wanted the rear-wheel drive for my track days. I worked at a local racetrack out here. Didn't pay much, but they had track days and whatever, and I played a little bit with this car. Now, we'll talk about cosmetically how this car is fading and aging, then we'll move on to the interior. So this car comes, like I said, not lowered like this. I did that myself. But this car did come with the red brake calipers. That is a Lexus F-Sport trait. As far as aging wise, the front bumper isn't the happiest. It's just kind of showing its age. It's fading, chipping. The lights, I have cleaned these lights many times and they just fade. Like I said, the bumper needs help. Now, I did buy this grille off a website. I mean, mostly they have a lot of different stuff, but I hated the big L for the Lexus. It just kind of looked like a luxury sedan when I wanted it to be more of a sporty car. So I purchased this mesh grille with this carbon fiber. This is real carbon fiber, but I bought this. It had the F badge on it because this is for a Lexus. It's the hood. The hood is showing some age and paint, but I mean, this car is just lovely. Now the roof is starting to get some clear coat issues going. So I did track this car, like I said. The only real damage I caused to it, I was in a drift event. They have these called winter X's here, and it gets icy and whatever. And there are a lot of Subarus and RSs there because they don't plow the track; they leave it snow. Well, I was going around the bend about 45, 50 mile an hour. This is about my fifth lap. Hit some ice, and I skid and ran into a concrete pole. But really, this is the only damage that happened. Right here, I lost this. Could buy those on eBay for 15 bucks, but I just haven't yet. Sadly, it did move my bumper, or it doesn't line up anymore. Now, I've tried to fix it in many different ways, but it just kept kind of popping it out because these plastic clips in here are broke. And I was sick of it. It would track snow in there, and it was just a hassle. So I just screwed this on. I know it looks really tacky, but it works for now. Like I said, this is my daily. I'm planning on getting a new car soonish, hopefully. But don't plan on selling this car, so it's fine. Now, as far as space goes, it's pretty average space for the size of car. I do think the interior is a little bit more spacious than the Subarus, but as far as trunk space goes, it's about the same. Let me pop it open. So I have my sleep bag in here. It's got camping, but as you can see, it's pretty average for this size of car. And that about goes for the outside. Let's talk about the interior a little bit. This car is the black interior. Here's the back seats. Every window in this car is automatic, which is something I haven't seen often. So basically, if you tap this once, the window goes down. So as you can see, everything open. I mean, these seats are laid back. They're back all the way, and they're kind of in like the lounging position. So that's why they're like that. But when I do go on road trips, I have many times in this car, I do pull all the seats forward a little bit to give the rear passengers a little bit more room. Now, I love these back seats. When you actually get in here, the way this holds you in there, they're not buckets, but the way it holds you in there, it's very comfortable. As you can see, all black, still very clean, 215,000 miles of wear in this car. The only real issue with the interior is this, for whatever reason, has started to chip, and my wife slowly makes it worse. These rims are niche rims. I kept the stock tire sizes. I didn't want to have issues with rubbing because I did lower it. So the fronts are 225s and they are staggered, and the rears are 245s. Now I've heard you can fit a 255 in there, but when I get my snow tires on these rims, the snow tires do measure a little bigger than these for whatever reason, and I do have some rubbing issues on it going over bumps. But with these on there, I don't have any issues at all. Now when you get in the driver's seat of the Lexus, you see I like it in here, you guys. It's very nice in here. I mean, all the leather's still really good. You see, I did put LEDs in this car. When this car, let me start it up for you guys. Still starts up every time, no issues. Let me shut the door. It is a pretty hot day out today. But as you guys can see, the thing you're seeing on the dash right now, that is because the batteries in my tire pressure monitoring system, one of them has gone bad. It'll be snowy here in a couple months, so I will fix that when I put my snow tires back on. I did put carbon fiber wrap on this when I first bought it. Like I said, I wanted it to be a little sportier. It is peeling a little bit. I just bought this stuff off Amazon. But as you can see, you guys, 215,000 miles. Now, as far as miles per gallon, there are cars better than this, but online it is rated pretty poorly for the class. But this is real life mileage, you guys. Average is 25.4 for this tank of gas. I reset that every single time. And that is probably 65% highway, and the rest of it's all city driving. I did have this screen stop working. Like, again, I bought this, I can't remember what they called it, but I bought it off Amazon. I fixed it myself. I did have to pry these vents apart because they're on clips and do that, so I did kind of ruin the weather there a little bit. But yeah, that is the interior of this car. I mean, it's got heated AC seats, both sides, 3 presets, and interestingly enough, the passenger side also has 3 presets, which is not something I've seen very much. Now, let me go show you the engine bay a little bit. Sorry about this wind, guys. I'm out here on the flats. It does get windy. And I forgot to pop the hood. Wonderful. Like I said, this car has 215,000 miles and everything works. I did put this F-Sport exhaust and air filter on it, like I said earlier. All it really gives you is that stainless steel pipe, and it gives you a little bit more high flow filter, but it still uses the stock intake system, unlike if you buy a K&N. But she still runs smooth like a top. Now this F-Sport exhaust, this is an expensive exhaust, and not many people make exhaust for these. But I didn't want something annoyingly loud, right? And this was a good buy. It does have a little bit more deep of a tone, but it's not annoying when you're going 80 miles an hour down the road. And I would recommend this car. I love this car. So really, that's all there is to this car. It might be a little bit more boring than the Subarus you see, but I ran this thing down a drag strip as well 3 or 4 times. And keep in mind, I'm up here in the high elevation of Utah, about 3,800 feet in elevation. And when I did this that time, the car had about 185,000 miles. And the car ran a 14.1 at 99 miles an hour. It's the fastest track I got. And I do have my slips for that still, somewhere at my house. So she's not slow. She's not very fast as, you know, the new cars, but you compare that to a Subaru or like my friend's Nissan 350, it is faster than my friend's Nissan 350, and it is very competitive with that. The car's a bit bigger than that, so let me give you guys a quick little rev. I think we'll call it. Let me set this up back there. I'm just gonna set you down so you'll be looking at the sky. Now, we can go for a little drive. It is very hot outside, you guys, so that's why you're hearing the fan kicking on. So like I said, this car does have the 6-speed automatic transmission, PRND. Click it over, you got your sport shift. Down is minus a gear, up is plus a gear. But you also have these paddles. Now, it will, if you leave it in 4, you slow down, it's gonna downshift. But if you leave it in a gear and get up to that gear, the car will leave it in that gear for you. And so you can really just bounce it off the limiter. And that's also another reason I bought this car. We're just gonna put it in drive. This car also has, right down here, some different little buttons. That's traction control. That is ECT power. Basically all that really does is the car will stay into a gear longer as you're going around a course or whatever. It also has a snow mode, which really numbs the throttle response down, and kind of makes the car sluggish feeling. I do use that button in the winter quite a bit. Now, let's go for our drive. So as far as this car is driving, the steering is electric power steering. So the steering is very light in this car. You can literally steer it with your finger. But as far as feel goes, it feels pretty good. I mean, you feel some of the bumps in the roads if you're driving aggressively, but it's still relaxing. Where if you're just cruising on the freeway, you feel very confident and comfortable in this car. Like I said, the car has always performed well for me. Now, if you guys are thinking about buying an IS or whatever, the newer ones are essentially the same, which is sad to say because this car is so old. I mean, they did update the interiors, but the motors are very similar. I would recommend it if you've never owned one. Now, would I buy this car again is a different story. I've had my fun with this car. I want something a little bit different. I want a manual again, because I used to own a manual, and I really want that again. This car is, like I said, it's a very reliable car. It won't never let you down. And for the age, I'll do a quick poll, but she's still strong running, but I do feel like I have lost some power from when I bought it to 135,000 miles, which is fine, you know. So 3, 2, 1. Like I said, you can bounce it off the limiter. Now I am on a road, it's not very busy, so there's no cars around me. I'm very safe about it, but don't try that at home. So that's my Is350, and I look forward to doing more car reviews for you. Thanks.